Woman pregnant for 12 years gives birth to a talking baby. How is this even possible? To find out, watch the video to the end. But first, please subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications to get more stories like this. The morning light filtered through the lace curtains in Martha's modest home as she sat in her favorite chair, her hands resting on her very large belly. It was a routine she had come to know well, her quiet moments of reflection, cradling the life inside her that seemed to be in no hurry to enter the world. 12 years. 12 long, bewildering years. That's how long she had been pregnant. Martha's pregnancy wasn't just unusual, it was unprecedented. Doctors had no explanation. Tests showed that the baby was perfectly healthy, but for reasons no one could understand, it simply wasn't ready to be born. Maybe it's nature's way of preparing something extraordinary, one doctor had suggested early on, half-jokingly. At the time, Martha had chuckled, but now, as the years stretched on, the words felt prophetic. Martha's journey hadn't been easy. In the beginning, the news of her prolonged pregnancy had been met with curiosity, then skepticism, and eventually ridicule. Her small town, Willow Creek, was a close-knit community where news traveled faster than the wind. Neighbors whispered behind her back, calling her the Eternal Mother or speculating that she was faking it for attention. She stopped going to town fairs and community gatherings to avoid the stares and questions. Even her old friends seemed to pull away, unsure of what to say or how to react. But Martha had never wavered in her belief that her baby would arrive when the time was right. She found comfort in her faith, her unshakable hope, and her nightly conversations with the life growing inside her. "Whenever you're ready, my little one," she whispered, her hand resting on her belly. "Mama's here." The medical community was just as puzzled as the townsfolk. Martha had consulted with specialists far and wide, from renowned obstetricians to experimental researchers, but no one could provide answers. Some suggested inducing labor, but Martha refused. "If the baby isn't ready, I won't force it," she said firmly. One particularly skeptical doctor had scoffed, "Martha, you've been pregnant for over a decade. This defies all logic. Are you sure this isn't some sort of psychological condition?" Martha's reply was calm but resolute. "Doctor, I feel him move every day. He kicks, he turns, he hiccups. He's as real as you and me. He's just waiting for his moment." The townspeople's curiosity turned into a sort of uneasy acceptance as the years went by. People stopped asking questions, though the whispers never truly stopped. Martha's life settled into a quiet rhythm. She tended to her garden, read books, and prepared for the baby's arrival as if it could happen any day, which, of course, it could. And then, one crisp autumn morning, the world shifted. Martha was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables for a hearty stew, when she felt a sharp pang in her abdomen. She froze, the knife hovering above the cutting board. Another pang followed, more insistent this time. Her heart raced. Could it be? After all this time? She grabbed her phone and called Dr. Emerson, the local physician who had been monitoring her case for years. "Doctor," she said, her voice trembling, "I think it's time." The hospital room buzzed with a mix of anticipation and disbelief. News of Martha's labor spread quickly, and the delivery room was packed with curious onlookers, nurses, medical interns, and even a few reporters who had somehow caught wind of the event. Martha's case had been a medical mystery for over a decade, and now, it seemed, the mystery was about to be solved. Dr. Emerson stood by her side, his normally composed demeanor tinged with nervous excitement. "Martha, you're doing great," he said, trying to maintain a calm tone. "We're almost there." Martha, despite the pain, smiled through her tears. "I've waited 12 years for this moment, doctor. I can handle a few more minutes." When the baby finally emerged, the room fell silent. The tiny figure was perfect, with bright eyes and a healthy cry that filled the air. But then, something extraordinary happened, something that left everyone in the room frozen in disbelief. The baby turned its head toward Martha, its gaze unusually focused for a newborn. And then, in a clear, unmistakable voice, it spoke. Hello, my name is Lucas. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. For a moment, no one moved. No one spoke. Even the steady beeping of the heart monitor seemed to fade into the background. Martha's eyes widened, her breath catching in her throat. Did he just? Yes, Mama, the baby said, his tiny lips forming the words with ease. It's nice to finally meet you. The room erupted into chaos. Nurses dropped their instruments, doctors scrambled to check the baby's vitals, and the reporters in the corner frantically adjusted their cameras. Dr. Emerson, his face pale, stammered, This isn't possible. Babies don't, they can't. But Martha wasn't listening. Her focus was entirely on Lucas, the miracle she had carried for 12 long years. She cradled him in her arms, her tears falling freely. You're here, she whispered. My little Lucas. Lucas smiled, his tiny hand reaching up to touch her face. I told you I'd come when I was ready, Mama. Thank you for waiting. The media frenzy that followed was unlike anything Willow Creek, or the world, had ever seen. News outlets from every corner of the globe descended on the small town, eager to cover the story of the baby who could talk. Scientists and researchers clamored to study Lucas, while spiritual leaders debated whether his birth was a sign of divine intervention. For Martha, the attention was overwhelming. All she wanted was to enjoy the quiet moments with her son, to hold him close and marvel at the miracle of his existence. But privacy was hard to come by when your child was the most talked about phenomenon in the world. Lucas, she said one evening as they sat together in the nursery, this is all so much. How are you feeling? Lucas, who was already sitting up and observing his surroundings with an intelligence far beyond his age, looked at her with calm eyes. I'm fine, Mama. I was born for this. His words sent a shiver down Martha's spine. There was a weight to them, a sense of purpose that both comforted and unsettled her. What did he mean? And what lay ahead for her extraordinary son? The days following Lucas's birth were a whirlwind. Martha's once quiet home had become the epicenter of global attention. News vans lined the streets of Willow Creek, reporters camped outside her house, and neighbors who once whispered about her pregnancy now stood at her gate, craning their necks for a glimpse of the miraculous baby. Inside, Martha tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. But raising a child like Lucas, who was anything but ordinary, was proving to be a unique challenge. He wasn't just talking, he was reasoning, questioning, and even offering advice in a voice that carried wisdom far beyond his days. By the end of his first week, he had learned to walk, effortlessly moving from one milestone to the next as if guided by some unseen force. One morning, as Martha sat at the kitchen table with a cup of tea, Lucas toddled in and climbed into a chair across from her. His small legs dangled as he clasped his hands together, mimicking the serious posture of someone about to discuss important matters. Mama, he began, his bright eyes locking onto hers, I think it's time we address the reporters outside. Martha nearly choked on her tea. Excuse me, she said, her voice filled with disbelief. They're waiting for answers, Lucas said matter-of-factly. And it's only fair that we give them some. Martha set her cup down, staring at him. Lucas, you're a baby. Babies don't give press conferences. Lucas tilted his head, a small smile playing on his lips. I think we've established that I'm not exactly a typical baby. Martha rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on her. Lucas, I just want to protect you. The world can be complicated. Lucas reached out and placed his tiny hand on hers. I know you're worried, Mama. But I'm ready. Trust me. Later that day, Martha stood on the front porch of her home, holding Lucas in her arms. A sea of reporters and cameras greeted her, the crowd buzzing with anticipation. She had resisted this moment for as long as she could, but Lucas had been adamant and, as always, persuasive. Good afternoon, Martha said, her voice steady despite the nerves coursing through her. Thank you for your patience. I know many of you have questions, and I'll do my best to answer them. But first, I'd like to introduce my son, Lucas. The crowd erupted into a frenzy, camera flashes lighting up the porch. Lucas, unfazed by the commotion, leaned toward the microphone Martha held and spoke. "Hello, everyone," he said, his small voice amplified but calm. "My name is Lucas. I know my arrival has caused quite a stir, but I ask for your kindness and understanding. My mother has waited a very long time for me, and she deserves peace." The reporters fell silent, their pens frozen mid-note. In that moment, the world saw not just a talking baby but an extraordinary presence, one that seemed to command both respect and wonder. The press conference became a viral sensation, with Lucas's words replayed on every news channel and shared across social media. But for Martha, it also brought a new set of challenges. Scientists and researchers were now more determined than ever to study Lucas, while spiritual leaders debated the meaning of his existence. Among the many requests Martha received was an invitation from a renowned university that wanted to conduct a series of tests on Lucas. "We simply want to understand his unique abilities," the letter read. This could be a groundbreaking moment for science. Martha was torn. On one hand, she wanted to shield Lucas from the relentless scrutiny. On the other, she couldn't deny the potential value of understanding more about his unique nature. She sat down with Lucas to discuss it, though it still felt strange to consult a baby about such complex matters. "What do you think, Lucas?" she asked, holding the letter. "Do you want to go?" Lucas sat cross-legged on the floor, flipping through a picture book. He didn't need to look at the letter to know its contents, he already understood. "Mama, I trust you to make the right decision," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "But if we go, I want you by my side." After much deliberation, Martha agreed to a limited series of tests, with strict conditions. The studies would be non-invasive, Lucas would be treated with respect, and she would be present at all times. The researchers, led by Dr. Eleanor Chang, were ecstatic. The university lab was a hub of activity when Martha and Lucas arrived. Scientists bustled about, setting up equipment and discussing protocols in hushed tones. When Lucas entered the room, the chatter stopped, and all eyes turned to him. "Hello," Lucas said, offering a small wave. "I hope we can work together to find some answers." Dr. Chang, a woman in her late 40s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor, approached him with a gentle smile. "Lucas, it's an honor to meet you. We're here to learn from you, but we'll go at your pace." Lucas nodded. "Thank you, Dr. Chang. I appreciate your understanding." Over the next few weeks, the researchers conducted a series of tests to better understand Lucas's abilities. They measured his cognitive function, his motor skills, and his linguistic capabilities, all of which far exceeded those of any other human, child, or adult. But what truly puzzled them was the source of his abilities. Brain scans showed no anomalies, and his genetic makeup appeared perfectly normal. "It's as if he's tapped into something beyond our understanding," Dr. Chang remarked one day, her voice tinged with awe. Lucas often surprised the researchers by offering his own insights during their discussions. When one scientist speculated that his abilities might be the result of a rare genetic mutation, Lucas chimed in. "Perhaps it's not a mutation but an evolution, a natural step forward for humanity." The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. It wasn't just his intelligence that set Lucas apart, it was his perspective, his ability to see the world through a lens that transcended logic and convention. While the scientific community marveled at Lucas, others saw him as a spiritual or even divine figure. Religious leaders from various faiths reached out to Martha, each offering their own interpretation of his birth. Some believed he was a sign of hope, others a messenger, and a few even declared him a miracle sent to guide humanity. Martha struggled to navigate these conflicting narratives. She didn't see Lucas as a savior or a scientific anomaly, he was simply her son, the baby she had waited 12 long years to meet. But as she watched him grow and interact with the world, she couldn't deny that he was special in ways she couldn't fully comprehend. One evening, as they sat together in the living room, Martha turned to Lucas, her expression thoughtful. "Lucas, do you ever wonder why you're the way you are?" Lucas looked up from the puzzle he was assembling, his eyes filled with a wisdom that seemed far too deep for his young face. "I think about it often, Mama," he admitted. "But I believe there's a reason for everything. Maybe I'm here to help people see the world differently." Martha's heart swelled with pride and a touch of sadness. She knew Lucas's path would be far from easy, but she also knew he had the strength to walk it. The challenges of raising Lucas in the spotlight became increasingly apparent as time went on. The media continued to follow his every move, and strangers often approached Martha in public, offering everything from praise to unsolicited advice. But through it all, Martha remained steadfast in her role as Lucas's protector and guide. "Lucas," she said one day as they walked through the park, "you don't have to be anything more than who you are. No matter what the world expects of you, just remember that you're my son first." Lucas smiled, his small hand slipping into hers. "I know, Mama. And that's more than enough for me." Life with Lucas was both extraordinary and challenging. Every day brought new surprises, as the little boy continued to defy every expectation of what a child, let alone a baby, should be. Within a few months, Lucas was not only walking and talking fluently, but he was also reading advanced texts, solving complex puzzles, and engaging in philosophical debates with adults who left these conversations equal parts bewildered and inspired. Yet, as gifted as Lucas was, Martha worked hard to maintain some normalcy in his life. She encouraged him to play, explore, and enjoy the simple pleasures of childhood. On sunny afternoons, she would take him to the local park, where he loved to climb trees and splash in puddles after the rain. But even in these quiet moments, it was impossible to forget that Lucas was different. One afternoon, as Lucas climbed down from the highest branch of a tree with the agility of a gymnast, a group of neighborhood children gathered nearby, whispering among themselves. "Isn't that the talking baby?" one of them asked in a hushed voice. Lucas heard them, of course. He always did. Walking over to the group, he smiled and said, "Hello. My name is Lucas. What's yours?" The children hesitated, their curiosity warring with their shyness. Finally, a girl with pigtails stepped forward. "I'm Emma," she said. "You're really smart for a baby." Lucas laughed, the sound bright and genuine. "I guess I am. But I'd love to play with you if that's okay." Emma looked at her friends, who shrugged, and then nodded. "Okay. We're playing tag. You can be it." For the next hour, Lucas ran and laughed with the children, his small legs moving with astonishing speed. Watching from a nearby bench, Martha smiled, her heart swelling with pride. For all his brilliance, Lucas was still just a child at heart. Back at home, however, the questions about Lucas's abilities continued to mount. The results of the tests conducted by Dr. Chang and her team had been inconclusive, leaving both scientists and the public hungry for answers. Speculation swirled, ranging from theories about genetic mutations to whispers of divine intervention. For Martha, the lack of clarity was both a blessing and a curse. It meant Lucas could remain a mystery, but it also meant the world wouldn't stop watching him. One evening, after Lucas had gone to bed, Martha sat alone at the kitchen table, sorting through a stack of letters and emails. Many were from well-wishers, offering support or sharing their own stories of hope and resilience. But others were from people demanding explanations, asking invasive questions, or even accusing Martha of orchestrating an elaborate hoax. She sighed, running a hand through her hair. The weight of the attention, the scrutiny, and the responsibility of raising a child like Lucas was beginning to take its toll. The next morning, Lucas seemed to sense her unease. Over breakfast, he looked up from his cereal and said, "Mama, what's wrong?" Martha hesitated, unsure of how much to share. But one look at Lucas's earnest face convinced her to be honest. "It's just a lot," she admitted. "All these people want answers about you, about why you're so special. And I don't know what to tell them." Lucas considered this for a moment, then reached across the table to take her hand in his small one. "You don't have to have all the answers, Mama," he said. "Sometimes it's okay to just let things be. People will always have questions, but that doesn't mean we have to answer them. Martha felt a wave of relief wash over her. As always, Lucas's wisdom far exceeded his years. "Thank you, sweetheart," she said, squeezing his hand. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Despite Martha's efforts to shield Lucas, the outside world continued to intrude. One day, a well-known television producer arrived in Willow Creek, determined to secure an interview with the talking child who had captured the world's imagination. The producer, a sharp-dressed man named Greg Peterson, approached Martha with an offer that was hard to ignore. "Ms. Roberts," he said, his tone smooth and persuasive, "this could be an incredible opportunity for Lucas, and for you. We want to tell your story, to show the world the incredible bond between a mother and her miraculous son." Martha frowned, wary of his slick demeanor. "And what exactly would this opportunity involve?" Greg smiled, sensing her hesitation. "Just a 1-hour special. Lucas would share a bit about himself, answer a few questions, and we'd highlight the love and dedication you've shown as his mother. It would be tasteful, I promise." Martha glanced at Lucas, who was busy stacking blocks into an elaborate tower nearby. She hated the idea of exposing him to even more public attention, but she also wondered if sharing their story could help others see Lucas for who he truly was, a bright, loving child, not just a phenomenon. "Let me think about it," she said finally. That evening, Martha discussed the offer with Lucas. As always, he listened carefully, his expression thoughtful. "Do you want to do it, Mama?" he asked. "It's not about me," Martha replied. "It's about you. If you're not comfortable, we won't do it." Lucas smiled. "I think we should. Maybe it's time people see that I'm just a kid who loves his mom." Martha laughed, pulling him into a hug. "You're more than that, Lucas. But I love you for it." The interview aired 2 weeks later, and it was an immediate sensation. Sitting on a cozy set decorated to look like a living room, Lucas charmed the audience with his intelligence, humor, and humility. He answered questions about his favorite books, his love of puzzles, and his bond with Martha, all while radiating a warmth that captivated viewers. But it was his closing statement that left the world in awe. "People keep asking why I can talk or why I'm so smart," Lucas said, his small voice steady and clear. "But maybe the real question isn't why. Maybe it's what can we learn from each other. My mom taught me that love and patience can overcome anything. And that's the most important thing of all." As the audience erupted into applause, Martha felt tears streaming down her face. In that moment, she realized that Lucas's greatest gift wasn't his intelligence or his abilities, it was his heart. The revelation from Dr. Malik about Lucas's potential connection to ancient prophecies weighed heavily on Martha. She had always believed Lucas was special, but the idea that his existence could have a larger, even cosmic significance was overwhelming. She didn't want him to feel burdened by expectations, but at the same time, she couldn't ignore the possibility that his unique gifts might hold a purpose beyond their small world. That evening, as she tucked Lucas into bed, she hesitated before speaking. "Lucas," she said softly, brushing a stray curl from his forehead, "do you ever feel like you're meant to do something important? Something bigger than just the two of us?" Lucas looked up at her, his bright eyes filled with understanding far beyond his years. "Sometimes I do," he admitted. "But I think whatever it is, it will happen when it's supposed to. For now, I just want to be your son." Martha felt tears prick her eyes. "You'll always be my son," she whispered, leaning down to kiss his forehead. "And that's more than enough for me." Despite their efforts to maintain normalcy, the world's fascination with Lucas only grew. Letters arrived daily from people asking for advice, sharing their struggles, or simply thanking Lucas for inspiring them. Among the letters, one stood out, a handwritten note from a young girl named Hannah, who described how Lucas's story had given her the courage to stand up to a bully at school. Martha read the letter aloud to Lucas, who smiled warmly. "Mama," he said, "can we write back to her? I want to tell her how proud I am of her." Martha nodded, pulling out a pen and paper. Together, they composed a heartfelt reply, which Lucas signed with his small but confident handwriting. To Hannah, he wrote, "You're braver than you know, and the world is better because of you. Keep being strong." One day, as Lucas played in the backyard, Martha received an unexpected visitor. Dr. Malik stood at the gate, his expression serious but kind. "Ms. Roberts," he said, "I hope I'm not intruding, but I've found something I think you should see." Martha invited him inside, her curiosity piqued. Dr. Malik opened his briefcase and pulled out an ancient manuscript, its pages yellowed with age. "This is a translation of a text written centuries ago," he explained. "It speaks of a child born under extraordinary circumstances, a child whose presence would bring hope and change to the world." Martha stared at the manuscript, her heart pounding. "Do you really think this is about Lucas?" she asked. Dr. Malik nodded. "I can't say for certain, but the similarities are striking. The text describes a child with wisdom beyond their years, a gift for understanding the world, and the ability to inspire others." "That certainly sounds like Lucas." Martha's mind raced. The idea that Lucas might be connected to such a prophecy was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. "What does it mean?" she asked. "What's he supposed to do?" Dr. Malik's expression softened. "I don't believe it's about what Lucas is supposed to do. It's about who he is and the impact he naturally has on those around him. Whether or not this prophecy is real, Lucas is already fulfilling it just by being himself." Later that evening, Martha shared the conversation with Lucas. As always, he listened carefully, his small face thoughtful. "What do you think, Mama?" he asked. "Do you believe in the prophecy?" Martha hesitated, then sighed. "I don't know, Lucas. But what I do know is that you've already changed my world, and that's more than enough for me." Lucas smiled, reaching for her hand. "Then that's all that matters," he said simply. As Lucas grew, his gifts continued to evolve in ways that left even the most skeptical observers in awe. He seemed to have an innate ability to sense what people needed, whether it was a kind word, a piece of advice, or simply a listening ear. People from all walks of life sought him out, and Lucas, ever humble, did his best to help them. One day, a man named Peter arrived at their doorstep. He was middle-aged, with tired eyes and a hesitant demeanor. "I don't know if I should be here," he said, his voice trembling. "But I've heard about your son, and I thought, maybe he could help me." Martha invited him in, offering him a cup of tea as Lucas joined them in the living room. "Hello," Lucas said, his small hand extended. "I'm Lucas. How can I help you?" Peter looked down at the boy, his eyes filling with tears. "I've been struggling," he admitted. "I lost my job, and I feel like I've lost my purpose. I don't know where to turn." Lucas considered this for a moment, then smiled gently. "Sometimes when we feel lost, it's because we're meant to find a new path," he said. "Maybe this is your chance to discover something even better." Peter's expression softened, and for the first time in months, he felt a glimmer of hope. "Thank you," he said, his voice breaking. "I think I needed to hear that." As the months turned into years, Lucas's impact on the world continued to grow. He became a symbol of hope and resilience, inspiring countless people to believe in themselves and strive for a better future. Yet, through it all, he remained grounded, always returning to the simple joys of life with Martha. But the strange phenomena surrounding Lucas persisted. Plants still flourished in his presence, animals seemed to flock to him, and even the weather occasionally seemed to respond to his mood. Scientists struggled to explain these occurrences, while others saw them as further evidence of his connection to something greater. The climactic moment came during a town hall meeting, where Lucas had been invited to speak about his experiences. The room was packed with people from all over, eager to hear from the boy who had captured the world's attention. As Lucas stood at the podium, his small figure radiating confidence, the crowd fell silent. "I know many of you have questions about who I am and why I'm here," Lucas began, his voice clear and steady. "The truth is, I don't have all the answers. But what I do know is this: we're all here for a reason. We all have the power to make a difference, no matter how small we may feel." The audience hung on his every word, their expressions a mix of awe and admiration. Sometimes, the most important thing we can do is simply be kind, Lucas continued. Kind to ourselves, kind to each other, and kind to the world around us. That's how we create change. As he stepped away from the podium, the room erupted into applause, and Martha felt a swell of pride that words couldn't capture. Lucas had grown into a force for good, a beacon of hope in a world that desperately needed it. As the applause echoed through the town hall, Lucas stepped down from the podium, his small frame dwarfed by the size of the stage, but not by the magnitude of his presence. People surged forward, eager to thank him, to shake his hand, to share how his words had touched their lives. Martha stood back, watching with tears in her eyes. Her heart swelled with pride as she realized just how much her little boy had grown, not just in years, but in impact. That evening, as they walked home under the glow of the streetlights, Lucas held Martha's hand, his steps light and his mood reflective. "Mama," he said, breaking the comfortable silence, "do you think I'm doing enough?" Martha stopped, crouching to meet his gaze. "Lucas, you've done more in your few years than most people do in a lifetime. You've inspired others, brought hope to so many, and reminded the world of the power of kindness. You're enough, just as you are." Lucas smiled, but there was a hint of uncertainty in his eyes. "Sometimes it feels like people expect me to solve everything. Like I have to be perfect." Martha pulled him into a hug, her voice soft but firm. "No one is perfect, Lucas. You don't have to carry the weight of the world on your shoulders. All you have to do is be yourself, that's more than enough." Over the next few months, life for Martha and Lucas continued at a steady but extraordinary pace. Requests for interviews, appearances, and collaborations poured in, but Martha carefully curated which opportunities they accepted, ensuring Lucas still had time to simply be a child. Despite his prodigious abilities, Lucas cherished the simple joys of life, playing with their dog, drawing pictures of their garden, and baking cookies with Martha. One day, while sorting through the mail, Martha found a letter from Dr. Malik. It contained an update on his research into the ancient texts that he believed might hold clues about Lucas's purpose. According to the latest translation, the child described in the prophecies was not destined to lead armies or perform grand miracles, but to remind humanity of the importance of compassion, understanding, and unity. Martha read the letter aloud to Lucas that evening as they sat by the fireplace. "Does that sound like you?" she asked, smiling. Lucas tilted his head thoughtfully. "I don't know, Mama. But I do think that's a good purpose to have." As Lucas grew older, his influence continued to spread. He became a quiet force for good, helping people in ways big and small. Sometimes it was through public speeches that inspired change, other times it was through private moments of connection, a kind word, a listening ear, or a piece of advice that seemed to come from a place far beyond his years. But as much as Lucas gave to the world, he always made time for Martha. Their bond remained unshakable, built on love, trust, and a shared understanding of the unique journey they had walked together. On Lucas's 8th birthday, the world seemed to hold its breath. News outlets ran retrospectives on his life, scientists published new theories about his abilities, and spiritual leaders reflected on the impact he had made. But for Martha and Lucas, the day was a private celebration, a chance to step away from the spotlight and simply be mother and son. They spent the morning baking a cake, laughing as Lucas insisted on decorating it himself. The result was a lopsided masterpiece covered in far too much frosting and an excessive number of sprinkles. "It's perfect," Martha said, and Lucas beamed with pride. That evening, as they sat in the backyard under a canopy of stars, Lucas turned to Martha, his face lit by the soft glow of the moon. "Thank you, Mama," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "For what?" Martha asked, her brow furrowing in confusion. "For believing in me," Lucas replied. "For waiting 12 years for me, for protecting me, and for always loving me no matter what." Martha felt tears prick her eyes. "You've always been worth the wait, Lucas," she said, pulling him into a hug. "You're the greatest gift I've ever received." As the years passed, Lucas continued to grow into his gifts, finding ways to balance his extraordinary abilities with his desire to lead a life filled with love and joy. He never stopped learning, never stopped questioning, and never stopped reminding those around him of the power of kindness and understanding. Martha, too, found her life transformed by Lucas. Through him, she discovered strengths she hadn't known she possessed, a capacity for love that seemed limitless, and a renewed sense of purpose. Together, they navigated the challenges and joys of their unique journey, always supporting and uplifting one another. On Lucas's 18th birthday, a crowd gathered in Willow Creek for a special celebration. The town square, once a place of whispers and skepticism, was now filled with people whose lives Lucas had touched. There were banners and balloons, music and laughter, and a sense of unity that seemed to radiate from Lucas himself. As the sun set, Lucas took the stage to address the crowd. Martha watched from the front row, her heart swelling with pride as her son spoke. "Thank you for being here," Lucas began, his voice steady and clear. 18 years ago, my journey began in a way that no one could have predicted. But through all the challenges, questions, and surprises, one thing has remained constant: love. He paused, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. "My mother taught me that love is the greatest gift we can give and receive. It's what connects us, heals us, and helps us grow. And it's what has guided me every step of the way." Lucas's eyes found Martha's, and he smiled. "Mama, thank you for being my greatest teacher and my greatest friend. Everything I've done, everything I'll ever do, is because of the love you've given me." Martha felt tears stream down her cheeks as the crowd erupted into applause. In that moment, she knew that every challenge, every doubt, and every moment of waiting had been worth it. Lucas was not just her miracle, he was a miracle for the world. As the celebration continued, Martha and Lucas stood together under the stars, much like they had on his 8th birthday. The years had brought changes, but their bond remained as strong as ever. "Do you think I've done enough, Mama?" Lucas asked, his voice quiet but filled with curiosity. Martha smiled, her hand resting on his shoulder. "Lucas, you've already done more than anyone could have imagined. But the world will always need your kindness, your wisdom, and your love. Just keep being you, that's all anyone could ever ask." Lucas nodded, a sense of peace settling over him. "I will, Mama. I promise." And as they stood there, surrounded by the love of their community and the beauty of the night, Martha knew that Lucas's journey was far from over. But whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, just as they always had.